That's a dongle. It connects my laptop to the projector. So there you are. See that? Okay. So now we're going to talk about our shiur for tonight. Um, the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic is because I happen to be flying from Eretz Yisrael to back to Toronto on Tainus Esther. I'm going on another mission to Israel with another group of people. And it just so turns out that my return flight is on Tainus Esther itself, which will be Thursday, I think March 22nd or something, 21st, something like that. And I just realized, was I doing the right thing by flying back? My flight leaves in the morning. It's a morning flight from Tel Aviv to JFK. Leaves 8:30 in the morning, and it's going to add 7 hours to the Tainus because I'm scheduled to get back to JFK probably around 6 p.m., something 5 p.m., something like that. And I'll be starving. I don't want to do that. So what should I do? And the converse question is, what if it's a Tainus and you're flying from New York or Toronto to Eretz Yisrael? You can cut your fast in half.
Or do you go by the time that it is where you left?
Tisha B'Av only makes it a little bit more difficult, right? Yeah. Because especially you're flying, it's you started the fast the night before. So what I want to present to you, there are two primary shittas that we're going to divide into a total of 4 shittot that I want us to go over tonight. And you'll see how the poskim developed this idea. What I find to be most fascinating is a small tshuva from Rav Moshe, who in a moment of candor basically says, we have no Masorah on this whatsoever. And so I can only work according to Svara. And that takes a true guttle to be able to say, like, when you have no Masorah, and you just say, okay, we got to say what makes sense. So it's actually source number 3 in your list. Let me just share the screen. And here we go. So it's source number 3 in your handout. And let's see, why is it so small in my, just expand it a little bit. There we go. Okay, so Rav Moshe writes as follows: Uvedavar shinuyei hayom bein hamidinot. He says, as far as different time zones, that's what he means by shinuyei hayom bein hamidinot. That different countries have different times. Uvenisia be'aeroplan b'matos, and when you're flying on a plane, magia bisman katzar lamidinot harichokim. In a very short time, you can get to a very faraway place. Shalifamim nimtza shahayom aroch lo biyoter, v'lifamim katzar biyoter. That sometimes you'll end up making the day much longer if you're flying westward, and sometimes you'll make the day much shorter if you're flying eastward. The kasha lahashiv bazeh. He says, I don't know how to answer this question. Ki ein al zeh mikorim mamoshim midivrei rabotenu. We don't have any substantive sources from our rabbis. V'tzarech ladun bazeh rak misvara. And therefore, all we can do is adjudicate based on our own logic. Aval al kol panim ashiv hanira lanius daiti bisvara. Let me tell you what I think based on svara. Shela inyan tainus misana bein lekula bein lechumra atzei takochavim shehu b'makom shenimtza az. Moshe says it makes only good sense to me that wherever you find yourself at that moment is what defines your day and night. So if in the plane or when you land, it's daytime and it's the tainus, you fast. If where you land it's nighttime, so then the fast is over. Ba'af shelif amim urak shaot mu'atin mishum shelo nikva hatanit al shaot ela al yom shuhu atzeta kochavim. He says, and sometimes that means that you'll only end up fasting for a few hours when you're flying eastward. And the reason is because the fast was designated for that date on the calendar, not for a specific number of hours. That's Rav Moshe's svara. V'chein b'tainish shel Tisha B'av, af im izdamein shemitchilat ta'anito ad agmar lo yihi dechaf dalet sha'os, nami ein tzarich lihit anot yoter mitzeit ha'kochavim shel or la'asiri. And even Tisha B'av, if you're flying eastward, Rav Moshe says, even though you have not fasted a full 24 hours, which is what Tisha B'av's fast is, nonetheless, once you make it to Tzeis HaKochavim, wherever you are, your fast is over. Okay, that's Rav Moshe's shita. So it's a kula and it's a chumrah. It's a kula when you're flying eastward, and it's a chumrah when you're flying westward.
For a winter fast, like 17 summers is short in South Africa, and
The same thing would be true if you're switching hemispheres. But here, yeah. Well, according to whatever Rav Moshe is saying, that wherever you are at the moment, he doesn't distinguish between land when you land or whether you're in the air. He just basically says wherever you are, and if it's daytime of the tainus, it's still tainus, and if it's nighttime where you are, it's tzeis hakochavim, then the tainus is over. So that'll quite often happen in midair. Yeah, you know. Yes, it can. There is a website, which I've given out. I don't remember now the link anymore, to calculate when you're in the airplane, what your zmanim are. In-flight zmanim or something like that, yeah. Yeah, 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 exactly. Okay. Rav, yeah, if you look out the window and it's dark and you see the stars. No, he doesn't say that it's totally on where you land. He says wherever you are. B'makom shenimtza'az. B'makom shenimtza'az. That's all he says. Okay. Rav Ovadia seems to say the exact thing in source number 4. Odot toshav artzot habrit she'achar suda hamafseket biyom chet av nasa b'matos le'eretz Yisrael. So we have a resident of the U.S. After he made the Suda Hamafsekes, he got on a flight on the night of Tisha B'av and flew to Eretz Yisrael. Uvemotzai Tisha B'av be'Eretz Yisrael adayin yom hu letoshavei artzot habrit. And by the time Tisha B'av is over in Eretz Yisrael, it's still daytime in the middle of the day on Tisha B'av in the U.S. Ha'im rashai le'echol achar hatainis b'tzeis ha'kochavim shel Eretz Yisrael. O alav lahamtin od keshei shos ad sheyagia zman tzeis ha'kochavim be'artzot habrit ve'achar kach yochel. So can he eat immediately upon tzeis in Eretz Yisrael where he currently is? Or does he have to wait the extra 6 or 7 hours to wait until the fast is over in New York City? Ra'iti b'shut yaskil avdi cheleches shekosav shemikivan shuhu chayav latzum b'tisha b'av me'eit la'eit. So I saw one tshuva, Shilas Tshuvas Yaskil Avdi, that argues no, that since you have to wait, you have to fast 24 hours. That was the Takonas Chachamim. Olav lahashlim ta'anito at Shiur Chavdalit shows. Then you have to fast 24 hours. So if you only started your fast at 6 p.m. New York time, or 7 p.m., 8 p.m. New York time, then you have to wait until 8 p.m. New York time before you can break your fast, which will be like, I don't know, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning in Eretz Yisrael. Shelo lifrosh min hatzibor shel kol ha'olam, because you're not allowed to separate from whatever your tzibor is doing in the world, which is everyone's fasting 24 hours. Shukula mitanim chafdal shos me'et le'et. והרי גם יום העשירי נוהגים בו מעט אבילות שלא לאכול בשר ולא לשתות יין עד חצות היום. ואם כן, גם ליל העשירי יולו להשלמת כ"ד שעות לתעניסו, עד כאן תוכן דבריו. And the Yaskil Avdi says that since the 10th of Av is also a partial day of mourning, it's considered as if you fasted on the proper day anyway, because you're extending the fast beyond into the 10th. V'lo kain anochi imadi. Listen to what Rav Ovadia says. That's not my view. Shemikivan shu nimtza be'eretz Yisrael miyad b'tzeit ha'kochavim shelel asiri yuchal le'echol in kol toshavei Eretz Yisrael she'ein lo ela mekomo v'shato. I disagree, says Rav Ovadia. I hold that once it says ha'kochavim in Eretz Yisrael, even though it turns out that you haven't fasted 24 hours, but you fasted more like 16, 17 hours, that's fine, because you go according to where you are at the moment. Okay, and if it's now Tzeis HaKochavim where you are, the fast is over for you. So it seems like it's an open and shut case, right? I'm sort of out of luck if I just look at Rav Moshe and Rav Ovadia, the two giant poskim of the 20th century. I'm sort of out of luck if I'm flying from Eretz Yisrael to New York on Tainus Esther. So because I'm flying westward, it's going to take an extra 7 hours. It's not going to be Tzeis HaKochavim. I'm still landing during the daytime, or close to. It's getting close to sunset. By the time I land, Laser, it's still going to be daytime in New York. Yeah, I'm taking off at 8:30 in the morning. Yeah. When you travel eastward, so then everything is shortened. You gain you jump ahead. When you're traveling westward, you gain hours and your day is longer. Okay. So based on Rav Moshe and Rav Ovadia, I'm out of luck. Okay. However, there's a whole bunch of other poskim. Okay. So now let's take a look. So Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank's son, the Mikroi Kodesh. Yeah, I know you're not supposed to go head to shopping. Okay. So to understand the svara of a whole litany of poskim who are much more makel, we need to look first at the Mishnah and Gemara in Maseches Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah says that al shisha chadashim hashluchim yotzim, that when we used to send out messengers to let the outlying communities of when the new month was, we didn't send them out every month. We only sent them out for 6 months out of the year, because those months had special occasions which required people to know what the date was, so that they would know how to demarcate that day of Yom Tov. So Al Nisan because of Pesach, Al Av because of Tisha B'Av, Elul because you need to know when Rosh Hashanah is, Tishrei you need to know Mipnei Takonas HaMoados, you need to know when Yom Kippur and Sukkot is, Al Kislev Mipnei Chanukah, and Al Adar Mipnei Hapurim. Okay? And then when the temple was standing, we would send out for Iyar for Pesach Sheni. Okay? Fine. Now, Gemara now says, V'lifku nami atamuz v'teves. Why don't we send out shluchim in the months of Tammuz and Teves? What about Shivasar b'Tammuz and Asara b'Teves? Don't people have to know when to fast? The Amar of Chana bar Bizna, Amar of Shimon Chasida, Mai dichsiv, Ko Amar Hashem tzivakos, Tzom ha'revi, v'tzom ha'chamishi, v'tzom ha'shavi, v'tzom ha'asiri, Yihi alabeis Yehuda l'sasun u'lesimcha. He says in the pasuk that these fast days, the fast day of the 4th month, the fast day of the 5th month, the fast day of the 7th month, which is Tzom Gedalia, and the fast day of the 10th month, which is Tisha B'Av, shall be for the house of Judah for joy and celebration. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Kari lahu tzom, the kari lahu sasum b'simcha. So the Gemara asks a side question. It says, I don't understand. Why are they called a fast day, and why are they called a day of celebration? Right? Bisman sheyeh shalom yu l'sasum l'simcha ein shalom tzom. So when there's a time of peace, these days are designated as days of sasun and simcha. When it's times of when there's no peace for the Jewish people, it's a fast day. So if these days are fast days and we're supposed to fast on those days, and Tammuz is the what is it the is that which Teves is Tzom HaRevi'i, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. Teves is Asiri. I stand corrected. Sorry. So Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz. Tammuz is Tzom HaRevi'i. Tisha B'Av is Tzom HaChamishi. Tzom Gedalia is Shavi, and Teves is Tzom HaAsiri. So why don't we include those months also, Tammuz and Teves? So Amar Rav Papa Hachi Kamar. So the way you understand the pasuk is as follows: Bisman sheyeh shalom yulasasim l'simcha. When the Jewish people are in absolute peace, like in Messianic times, those fast days become holidays. Yeshmad, when it's a time of religious persecution, active religious persecution, then it's a fast day. Ein shmad ve'ein shalom, ratzu misanin, ratzu ein misanin. But if there's neither shmad nor absolute peace, so then it's not totally obligatory to fast on Asara B'Teves, on Shiva and Shiva Asar B'Tamuz. And as Rashi explains, V'kevin derishusu lo matrichinan shluchim alayhu. These are not absolutely obligatory days of fasting, and therefore we don't send out shluchim to announce when the Rosh Chodesh was. So the Gemara says, well, Ihachi Tisha B'Av Nami. Then why don't you do the same thing for Tisha B'Av? And it's not important. It's just a rishus. If it's not a time of Shmad, why do we send out shluchim on Som HaChamishi? So the Amar of Papa, Shiny Tisha B'Av, Hol V'Huchbelu Bot Saros, the Amar Mar B'Tisha B'Av, Chorev Habayis Barishanu Vashnia V'Nilka Da Beitar V'Nechver Shaha'ir. The answer is that Tisha B'Av is a day that has been designated for multiple tragedies, and therefore the rabbis were not prepared to be lenient to give a person just the option of fasting on Tisha B'Av. They made it obligatory, and that's why shluchim have to go out. The shluchei Beis Din have to go out and tell people when Rosh Chodesh Av is, because you need to fast on Tisha B'Av. So what we basically have is the Gemara saying that it's really not an obligatory fast, Asara B'Teves and Shiva Asar B'Tamuz. Is that how we paskin in Shulchan Aruch? That it's your option to fast? No, we don't paskin that way. But based on this Gemara, we see that there's certain leniencies that we can rely on when it comes to issues perhaps such as this. So Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank's son, the Mikroi Kodesh, writes as follows: Nishalti me'echad sheyotze ba'aviron me'eretz Yisrael America b'hascholas tzom shivasar b'tamuz. I was asked the following shaila: a person is flying by plane from Eretz Yisrael to America at the beginning of the 17th of Tammuz. I guess he's leaving in the morning. V'yagia la'America be'etzem hatzom sham v'ukvar b'tzom yoiser michaf daled shows. This guy's fasted for more than 24 hours because of the length of the day. Because, in the summer, how many hours is a regular Shivas or B'Tamuz? Let's say it starts at, 5 in the morning and doesn't end until, 9 p.m.? Let's say naniach, okay, just to use rough numbers. So how many hours is it? That's 12 and 4, that's 60. It's a 16-hour fast. And then tack on another 7 hours, it's 24 hours. The guy's going to be fasting 24 hours. I mean, Ribono Shel Olam, come on, what's the deal here? So he wants to know, is he obligated to fast that whole time and wait until it says HaKochavim in New York? V'amarti lo al pi divrei hanachal eshkol sha'al sefer ha'eshkol. Now, the sefer ha'eshkol is written by a Rishon, but the commentary Nachal Eshkol seems to be from an Acharon. And in Hilchos Tisha B'Av, he writes as follows: Shenishal al yedei harav de Stockholm. the rabbi in Stockholm, Sweden. Okay? Al minhagam sha'ochlim biyud zayin betamuz tes v'chetzi shos achar chatzos va'od hayom gadol. They break their fast on Shivasar B'Tammuz in Stockholm in July. What time is nighttime in Stockholm in July? Probably 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. if, yeah, maybe it never even gets dark. May not even get fully dark in Stockholm in July. Okay, so there you go. But the minhag in Stockholm is after Chatzos Hayom, which is, let's say, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, with daylight savings, perhaps, or maybe there's no daylight savings. Who knows what happens in Stockholm? 9.5 hours after Chatzos, they break the fast. Fast is over, which is still, the sun is still shining. So where in the world does this minhag of Stockholm come from? Like, on what basis did they give themselves this heter? So Iva Amru Shekach Kiblu, and he says that was their Kabbalah. So he was speaking to the Rav in Stockholm that that was their Kabbalah, and he explained it al pisvar. Barur shelo garu Yisrael bekoitev hatzfoini udromi ela misaviv liigul sartan. He says right after the Churban, when the rabbis were ordaining ta'anios, fast days, it's clear that Jews were only living no further north than the Tropic of Cancer and no further south than the Tropic of Capricorn, right? You know what I mean when I say the Tropic of Cancer? Okay, I'm dealing with educated Canadians. Ulachol harachog ad neged eagle nun beis, and certainly not north of the 52nd parallel. Does anyone know where the 52nd parallel is approximately? You want to know where it is? So, it's the 49th parallel? It's the US? So it's probably around Toronto, a little farther north of that. But it's certainly not all the way up in Stockholm. It's not, right? Okay. Maybe Scotland. Okay. Uvachol hamakamos ha'elu achar tes v'chetzi achar chatzos hayom v'adai lailahu. And we can rest assured that anything within the 52nd parallel in the middle of July at 9:30, by 9:30 at night, it's going to be dark. Okay? Im kain kol Yisrael lo kiblu lihit anot yoter mites umechza achar chatzos. Based on that, no Jew in any Jewish community, when they made this takana, ever accepted to fast longer than 9.5 hours after chatzos. Vinomar, Kevin de Beratzon Talia Kach Kiblu Aleim Velo Yoter. And since these takanos, these gezeros, were based on the acceptance of the Jewish people, and no one among the Jewish people ever accepted to fast longer than that, then there's no svara to say that we in Stockholm should have to fast any longer than what was the original decree. V'cheinu b'pnei Yoshua chelak dal le'inin shemispalel in arvis biyom the Yishlomer dekach kiblu lechoyve sheih lem reshus lehitpalel biyom ad kan lashono. And the Jews of Stockholm, not just on fast days, but they daven Ma'ariv while it's still well within the daytime, well before Shkia, perhaps even well before Plag HaMincha. What's the svara to be mekel? That was Ma'ariv is a reshus, and when the Jewish people, we know, you know what I'm saying when I say Ma'ariv is a reshus, it means that originally the rabbis did not obligate us to daven Ma'ariv every day, but we accepted it voluntarily upon ourselves at some point in Jewish history, post Churban, and as such, we don't have to do more than what Klal Yisrael accepted, which is a reasonable time in the evening to daven Ma'ariv. V'hainu shele'inyan dalet somos de'amrinan b'gemara ratzu ein mit'anin u'v'ratzon talya milta. So he says, let's think about it. The 4 ta'anios, including Tisha B'Av, because those are all the fasts that are mentioned by the Navi. The Gemara says ratzu mit'anim, ratzu ein mit'anim. And it's up to the tzibur, with the exception of Tisha B'Av, it's up to the tzibur to decide whether they want to fast or not. That's what the language of the Gemara. So it's basically talui in the acceptance of the tzibur. Afte ha'idna kol hatanios ha'ilahim choyva mishum shekiblu alayu, ain based in yachol levatel v'chulei. And even though nowadays the Jewish people accepted the fast en masse to fast during these fast days, even though originally it was optional, but we fasted, and the Beis Din can't break the Kabbalah of Klal Yisrael. Mikol makom ein l'chayiv ha'idna yoter mima shekiblu bizman hahu. It doesn't make sense to be more machmir than what the Kabbalah was of Klal Yisrael when they accepted to make it obligatory. So that's the argument of the Eshkol. Just 1 second, Ilana will get to you. Ve'alpi divrei ha'eshkol hanal yesh lomar diyoter michafdalad shos lo kiblu. And therefore, we would apply the same svara to when a person is flying westward. No one ever accepted upon themselves to fast longer than 24 hours on Tisha B'Av. Va'afilu b'Tisha B'Av yesh ladun bein Tisha B'Av l'gimel tzamos. And because even though the Gemara says Beratzon Talia Milsa only by the other 3 fasts, but we could argue that at the time when they were Mitake and Tisha B'Av as a formal obligatory fast day in the times of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, there too it was accepted as a 24-hour fast and not longer. But then he raises a suffix about Tisha B'Av, that it may not be Tali and Ratzon. So there's room to be machmir for Tisha B'Av, to go even longer than a 24-hour fast. But certainly what comes out, according to Tzvi Pesach Frank, and here I'm sorry, when I see this, I get really excited, because as you and I know, Tainus Esther is even less chamor than the Ta'anios for the Churban, because it's not even mentioned by the Navi. Right? It's not mentioned in the Megillah at all. It's just became a minhag at some point that Chazal instituted. So when Chazal instituted it, they were not makabelit that it should be ever longer than 12 hours from dawn to tzeis. So therefore, we have definitely what to rely upon, that since the Kabbalah of this tainus was never meant to be longer than 12 hours, you're not mechuyev to go beyond that. And so, if the fast, let's say, started in Tel Aviv at 5:30 in the morning, so then 12 hours for sure after that, you could be somech to break your fast. So we haven't seen him say that yet, but we'll see other poskim are going to say that. And the reverse too. Whoa, wait. The reverse is a different svara. We don't know. Based on this svara, that it's totally on what the original takana, the original Kabbalah was, not longer than X. We don't know what he would say if a person's flying eastward and the fast is shorter than 12 hours or shorter than 20. So you could argue, since the original Kabbalah was 12 hours, maybe you have to fast even though you land in Tel Aviv and it's already nighttime. Maybe could go both ways. We'll see. So at least my problem is solved. I don't need to look anymore at the shiur. I already found a heter. I'm going to break my fast whenever on the plane, because I'm a wimp and a wuss, and I don't want to have to sit in the plane and not drink anything and so forth. So okay, fine, I'm happy, right? But let's go on. Rav Vosner, yes, Elon. Yeah. Because he's saying, historically, where have Jews lived?
London, England, they said is 51. Edinburgh is 55.
Oh, so maybe it has to do with the fact that he knows where Jews settled. Jews in the diaspora didn't go north of England. He said it was the Jews settled around the Tropic of Cancer, a little bit north and a little bit south. We didn't deviate that significantly from where the. Yeah, right. That's right. And yeah. No,
No,
no.
Tropic cancer is 22.5.
Yeah,
But I thought that was.
no. He's saying when we look at where the Jews were exiled after the Churban, they mostly migrated to areas in the vicinity of the Tropic of Cancer and certainly not above the 52nd parallel. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tshuvas from the Shevet Halevi from Rav Vosner. Two tshuvas that are very similar. We may only need to see the first one. He writes this in Tafshin Mem Vav to Harav Moshe Tuvia Weisberger, and he writes as follows in source number 5. Yikarto kibalti v'odot echad asher nosea b'tzom yud zayin b'tamuz la'artzot habrit. Same shaila, a guy's flying on the 17th of Tammuz to America from Eretz Yisrael. Wow, noisy. Yeah, well, it's always the first time. Makes me a little nervous. So he's flying out of Israel before noon. So the day is prolonging at least an additional 7 hours. Could he break his fast earlier while it's still midday wherever he is in the air or on the ground? Or maybe, like Chazal say, any fast where you don't wait until sunset is not a fast. Now, first of all, I can definitely be makel to allow you, instead of waiting until Tzeis HaKochavim where you are, to wait until Shkia, right? Which is you'll save 42 minutes or 45 minutes, right? He says, that I can for sure give you. Because there are a number of earlier poskim who hold that when we tell you you have to fast until Shkia, which we interpret, most poskim interpret that to mean Tzeis HaKochavim, some poskim say it means the beginning of Shkia. Okay, so that's one thing. Aval, but what about breaking your fast before Shkia? That I'm going to get to now. And let's start the next paragraph. Omar, betach devadai ein la avor al hahalacha, the choltaina shaloshakal of chama kimavur tainis yud beis, or chaim simen tavkuf samach beis. We certainly don't want to violate the rule that Chazal say that if you don't fast a full day, it's as if you didn't fast. And by the way, that's not so true. There are many times when we fast until Chatzos Hayom, but it's not officially fasting in the way that Chazal ordained fasting. Aval, Pashut be'enai the Chazal lo hitilu chiyuv tainus bahar be'shos biyoter. But what's clear to me is that when Chazal instituted fasting, they didn't want a person to fast excessively longer than the original takana. The imkein ad America hamizrachis who hevdel shel sheva shos. He says, because think about it. If a Jew is flying from Israel to the east coast of the U.S., that's 7 hours difference. And if he's flying to the west coast, that's a difference of 10 hours. And if he's flying to Honolulu, to whatever he's got going on there, not much going on as far as Yiddishkeit, but there's a Chabad there. You never know. So is a 13-hour difference between Eretz Yisrael and Hawaii. Ve'ein shum safek belibi. The kamoshanu matirim l'choila she'ein bo sakana b'tanei simela. And so I have no doubt. Listen how lenient we are on fast days outside of Yom Kippur, of course, right? We allow a person who's even a choila she'ein bo sakana to break their fast. Okay? And if a person just says, I can't fast anymore, we give him a break. We say, okay, fine, you can't fast, so you can't fast. He says, and therefore, we would certainly permit someone who's going to have to fast an additional, sometimes 10 hours, we would definitely say that this is a suffix, perhaps of pikuach nefesh, because who knows if a guy can endure fasting for those extra hours. And then he brings from the Nachal Eshkol the same svara that Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank brought, his son brought from the Sefer Nachal Eshkol, that Chazal never intended for us to fast longer than that. But Rav Vosner says, I don't think you have to come on to that. I'm coming on to it from a health standpoint, says Rav Vosner, not from a historical takana aspect, like what did Chazal have in mind when they instituted the tainus. And as you see, I'm skipping a few lines. I think what I'm saying is even more straightforward. He says, but you can't impose a tainus that is going to be overly taxing on a person's physical health. And therefore, just like a sick person is putter from fasting whenever he feels sick, so to a person, once he's already fulfilled the quota of the amount of time that a person would normally fast, you should exempt him from fasting any further. Which, by the way, to me is fascinating because, let me ask you a question. It's Asara B'Teves in South Africa. Okay, we got a South African here. Asara B'Teves in South Africa is probably one of the longest fast days of the year. It's probably an easy 5 hours longer than it is here. So is that and Shivasar B'Tammuz is just the opposite. So does that mean that if I go to South Africa, I have to be worried about my health for during Asara B'Teves because I'm only used to fasting until 5 p.m. And in South Africa, they're fasting until 10 p.m. See, in other words, I have a bit of a problem with the svara that Rav Vosner is saying that it's based on health considerations. There are plenty of times when we fast longer, but I guess his argument is he's not using that argument. He's not using that argument. His argument is that it's based on health considerations, and I guess maybe what his argument is that we never find that Chazal wanted a person to stretch his fasting beyond a certain limit, perhaps because we're concerned for his health.
24-hour fast. Could that be like a health thing that you wouldn't have when you're miles away from another path?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So again, it's a very subjective argument, but basically he's saying that Chazal were okay with a person fasting 24 hours only on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. It's going to compromise your health? No. We can, Yom Kippur, the Eibishter said you got to do it. Tisha B'Av, one day will be able to push a person to his health limits and tell him to fast 24 hours. But we don't want a person to risk their health by fasting on any other fast day longer than is absolutely necessary. Now, he says, since my heter is based on health considerations, listen to this nafkamina that Rav Vosner suggests. He says, "V'nafkamina de lo huter lahem lechol achila regila ela hatzarich." Now, we know when a person has to break their fast for health reasons, they're not supposed to sit down to a 5-course meal. You drink or eat whatever you need to in order to preserve your health. And like the Sam Sofer says in Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Nun Zayin, "V'chi hacholi eino mechuyev b'dvar hataynis ve'eino misana bo ba'alo lo huter lo ela kedei tzarcho b'chiyuso." He says that granted, when you're sick, you have a heter to break your fast, but you only have a heter to ingest what you need to stay healthy. And so therefore, if all you need to do is drink, you don't need to eat, so then you should just drink. And if you don't need to have 2 meals and it'll be enough for 1 meal, just have 1 meal. Below yoter mima shetzarich yu'in sham. V'hachanami b'didan. And therefore, if you're chalashing while you're flying, and it's already, the fast is over in Tel Aviv, you definitely have a heter based on these health considerations that Rav Vosner is saying. You have a heter to break your fast, but don't go to town. Don't eat those chocolates that you bought in the airport, right? Because you wanted to eat them. Have the airline meal.
That's not considered going to town, is it?
Yeah, that's not going to town. Although, it depends. All right. So that he says, so far we've seen two chuvas, one from Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank's son and one from Rav Vosner, that the argument is that Chazal were not, you don't have to fast based on where you are, right? Because especially when you're flying westward, it's not going to be Tzais HaKocham for many hours hence. You can base yourself either on like the 12 hours that Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank argues, or it's not clear from what Rav Vosner says, but not longer than what other people are fasting. But he doesn't specify. Now, we would presumably say it's the origin, although he doesn't specify it exactly. So I just want to finish off, because we're a little bit limited on time. Let me finish off with an article from Tzvika Reisman, who, as many of you know, has written many articles collecting the different Piskei Halacha. And he argues that there's 4 different shittas. Even though there's more for us, there's definitely more that we could go over with. There's a Sefer Pri Eliyahu from Eliyahu Zlotnik, who talks about this as well. And Rav Vosner in the second Shuba just says, you could go according to where the fast end time from where you started in Eretz Yisrael. That he says explicitly in the second Shuba. Okay, so let's take a look at the Lisikum. It's a long essay, but I'm just telling you the bottom line. He brings 4 shittas. Lisikum bedine hatasmi makom lemakom betainas alu biyadenu dalit shitot ketzad yinhag keshihigia lemakom chetzo. What you should do when you arrive at your destination. So first he quotes from the Igros Moshe and the Chazon Ovadia, Rav Ovadia and Rav Moshe, that you go according to Tzeis HaKochavim in the place where you are, both Lakula and Lachum. So that we're not going to read inside, because that is very clear. We've seen those chuvas inside. Rav Zlotnik in the Pri Eliyahu, V'yaskil Avdi, Tzarech Litzum B'Shiur Yom. B'hainu Chaf Dalit Sha'ot B'Tisha B'Av, V'Yud Bet Sha'ot B'Shar HaTa'aniyot. They say it's a Tisha B'Av is a 24-hour fast. Shivasar B'Tammuz and Asar B'Teves are 12-hour fasts. V'lachein keshenosea mimakom sha'adayin mitanim. So therefore, when you're traveling from a place like America where they're already fasting, lamakom sheshak acham b'term sim yud bezo chavdalet shos atainis Yisrael. Let's say you're flying to Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael it's already tzeis hakochavim, but you haven't fasted a full 12 hours yet. Alav lahashlim et yud bezo chavdalet shos atainis. Then the Pri Eliyahu is machmir to require you to not break your fast. So he's more machmir when you're flying eastward. You have to wait until you have a full 12 hours on Asara B'Teves or Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Then we have Rav Vosner, and he says, Me'ikar hadin sim ataynes nikva b'tzeis ha'kolchavim, u'leficha chatos me'artzos abris liYisrael, misayim tanisu b'yitzizas ha'kolchavim b'Yisrael. He says, what? He does say. He says, when you're flying from America to Israel and you're cutting the fast short, you go according to Tzeis HaKochavim, even though you haven't fasted 12 or 24 hours. Ulam keshetas mi Yisrael la'artzot habrit, ein lahachmir alav sheyisayim tanito, rak b'tzeit HaKochavim be'artzot habrit. He says, when you're flying from Israel to America, we are not machmir to make you wait until Tzeis HaKochavim in America, v'latzum k'sheva shos la'achar she'istayim hatzom b'Yisrael, and to fast like an extra 7 hours. Gedin choyla hamitzdayer hapoter mitainis. Why? Because you're exempt from fasting, because you're like a choyla. It's like you're as if you're a choyla that is potter from fasting further. Okay? And then what? He does yeah. Well, it could be that you go according to whatever time the fast is over. Let's say if it's Asara B'Teves, at your origin point, if you flew from Eretz Yisrael to New York, and it's Asara B'Teves, and it's a short day, maybe you could argue that it's less than 12 hours because, yeah. And finally, Chubas Van Hagos for Sternbach, Siyum Hatzom Eno Nikva B'Tzeis HaKochavim Ela B'Siyum Shir Yoim Shalom. He also says that it depends, you have to fast a full day. So when you fly from America to Israel, he says categorically you have to fast 12 or 24 hours for Tisha B'Av. It shows, he says, Yesh lahachmir b'Tisha B'Av. He says the only day that he's machmir when you're flying westward is to make you fast longer on Tisha B'Av. She'itana atzeis hakochavim be'artzot habrit. That was your question, Cyril. Rav Sternbach is machmir only for Tisha B'Av. V'lo bishar ta'aniyot sherashai lahakel ulahafsik ta'anito v'hashlimo chafta l'tshos yitzias atainis b'Yisrael. He says you can always be makel for other fasts. Od b'terem siyuma be'artzot habrit. That whatever time the fast is over in Eretz Yisrael, that's the time you can break your fast in wherever you are in the air or on the ground. And then finally he says, Ach kishenimtza b'matos v'adayin lo higia lemechos chetzo. But let's say you're still in flight and the fast is over in Tel Aviv. You haven't yet landed in New York. Nitba'er b'divrei hapri Eliyahu tshuvas van hagos v'siach nachum ki atainus mistayemet k'minhag hamakom sheyatza misham. There, we have a whole bunch of poskim who say that it goes, you end your fast based on the time that the fast is over in the place where you departed from. Heyot v'himatzu uto b'matos nechshevet chilu nimtza b'midbar. Because it's like you're in the middle of the desert. And so therefore there's no regulator as far as when, what the place's minhag is. And therefore, if the fast ends in Tel Aviv while you're still mid-flight, a whole bunch of poskim upon which you can rely say that you break your fast in mid-air whatever time the fast is over in Tel Aviv. Yeah. Well, lefize pasku shebetisam Yisrael artzot habrit mistayemet atayni lefi shon Yisrael, and therefore they paskin that whatever time the fast is over in Israel is when you could start eating. So you just calculate. You just look. Before you get on the plane in Tel Aviv, you look at your app. That tells you what time Tzeis HaKochavim is. Subtract 10 minutes if it's Tainus Esther or Shivas or B'Tammuz or Asara B'Teves. 35 minutes after Shkia, you can be makel to break your fast. And then that's when you can break your fast.
To not be fasting more than 12 hours because Chazal knew that the length of the day changes throughout the year for a day fast. It's called a day fast instead of 12-hour fast. They never instituted 12 hours. Like when we're talking about 12 hours, we're talking about secular hours.
Or we're talking about 12 halachic hours.
So that means that you can basically calculate what the shots are in some versus winter and go, oh, now,
Yeah, but when they calculated those 12 halachic hours, sometimes there may be 14 or 15 real hours. Sometimes they're 8 or 9 real hours, but they're never longer than that because people weren't living in Stockholm. That's the argument, right? Okay, so I already told you. Rav Vosner, the Pri Eliyahu, Rav Sternbach, and it's Tainus Esther. It's Tainus Esther that's not Erev Purim. It's a Tainus Esther that's Nidche. So there's so many reasons, Laser, to be makel, this Tainus Esther, while I'm in mid-flight and I am dehydrated.
Further to the SCP, hopefully it's not from friends sitting next to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. The only thing like Paul said, the only thing I have to worry about is the Myrasayan. Like, what if there's a bunch of very frum people that are sitting around me, and they're going to say, Shigit.
This year, yes. Put it in a USB and
We'll buy you a leaf pad.
Yeah.
The kid on the plane whose birthday was that day, so the kid basically missed the birthday. So they had a birthday party on the plane with the
Okay.
cake for this kid. But that actually could mean that you can miss
100%.
you can miss the father.
100%. And one of these days we'll have a shir on Sfiras HaOmer, what you do when you're crossing the date line. Right. Did we do it once? Or did you do it? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I must have missed that day in the share. But anyway, I did also see, and I forget now the source where I saw it, that some poskim want to argue that if when you land, it's still daytime, and there are people in there are other Jews in the airport, then you have to break your fast bitzina. In other words, you should not be done before Esya because of Marasai. On the plane, it's one thing, right? But once you're off the plane and you're like, no one can tell that you just came from Eretz Yisrael. So there you have to only eat bitzina, like nibble in a corner where no one can see. Pretend you're on the phone or something.
I know that I was only from Israel, not into outer space, but it does think that you follow whatever the timing was in the place you left. If you took off from Cape Kennedy in Florida, then
Yeah, but that generally doesn't apply for Zmani Tefillah. Doesn't apply for Zmani Tefillah. But for Zmani Tefillah, we go according to where you are. And
I don't know how that would work if you went to the moon.
Usually that only is a question when you cross the date line. When we're not crossing the date line, it's not a shayla. Al daven Shacharis in Israel. It'll be late afternoon, early evening. Yeah.
You would leave London?
I may probably daven on the plane. It may be too late. I don't remember what time I land. But it could be. It could be. I'll be able to daven on the ground.
Rabbi broke up fast, and now Leah.
Very good, Shaila.
You're going to come back now. Are you considered? We're fasting, right?
That's right.
You're going to come back. You're
I'll
going to
come back. Maybe wiping my mouth.
You're right.
Yeah, right.
Only Cohen.
Not the only. Well, whatever. And now you get an aliyah.
Normally we paskin that whoever's not fasting is not supposed to get an aliyah.
Correct.
Right.
Are you
You completed the fast.
I did fast, but currently I'm not fasting. Sasvara no sense. Again, this is a wonderful shaila.
Those of us in the crowd who've been to the Shiur know that.
But yeah, but the svara would dictate.
We know that he's eating